For some things about Oxnard that I'm not too fond of. Now, many people, especially casual listeners that are into Anderson .Paak music in this day and age, came from his 2016 release Malibu that had this extremely soulful, rhythmic, jazzy atmosphere to it that Anderson .Paak managed to bring a lot of soul to as well. It's very rare that artists bring their own vibe to an album that already has a vibe, but Anderson .Paak managed to do that on Malibu. A pretty enjoyable project to me. In my opinion, not his best work. I right now still prefer Oxnard, and I'm going to tell you why. Malibu, in my opinion, was a much more softer approach and tone to Anderson .Paak entering, whatever realm that he was trying to enter at the time. Though he did have his own sound and his own aesthetic, I felt like it was from the point of view of someone who wasn't as confident in it, even though he still approached it in a very charismatic way. I think a lot of people forget that Malibu, although much more sonically cohesive, was a longer runtime than Oxnard. And although a lot of people love the atmosphere that an album like Malibu did provide, I felt like a good portion of the tracks off that album didn't really know what they wanted to do after a certain duration per track. This is still coming from a big fan of Malibu, but I think a lot of the beats on that album, a lot of the instrumentals and the soulful, jazzy vibe of it kind of is redundant when I look at Anderson .Paak and the soulful, rhythmic delivery that he has already. You would think that an album like that would just be the perfect canvas for an artist like that, but I feel like Oxnard works better for him because it's a different aesthetic sonically going on in that album, especially from the production from Dre. I feel like it allows him to bring forth a new melody or a new atmosphere to an already existent one that's different from the one that he has on his own. Don't get me wrong, on some artists' music, that actually helps them out a lot, but I feel like in some other artists' music, it can make their album seem a little less explosive. And that's not to say that Oxnard is so far away from Malibu sonically that it doesn't have its own jazzy, very R&B influenced moments either. But for the most part, it's more of a G-funk, more hip-hop, rap-directed album than it is a soulful R&B jazzy one. So I was a little surprised when I saw so many people kind of disappointed with this album in the sense that it didn't really provide a similar aesthetic that Malibu did, when in my opinion Anderson .Paak is at a far different point, not only in his personal life I would assume, but in his career at this point, that a more confident sound behind him would kind of be preferred, at least in my opinion. When I listen to this album, I get a vibe of triumphant material, and it's an aesthetic that Anderson .Paak manages to add to with his lyrics. Take a track like Tints featuring Kendrick Lamar, where Paak wants to basically talk about being able to do what he wants to do, but from the shadows, not being noticed because this new space of celebrity. And are we really going to be so dense about the idea of the track Headlow? I mean, this track, while I can agree with many that the slurping noises on that song are unbearable, I am completely cutting that out of the song at this point. You can't not reference how it ties into the very next track, where Anderson is talking about wanting to do his thing from a low profile. He wants to do his thing and not be seen. On the track before, Headlow, if he had tinted windows, this might not have happened. He might not have been worried about being seen, or he might have been able to do it out in the open and not worry about it. This again ties into the track before it, where he's going on the chase. Okay, we got the chase, then we got Headlow, where he's doing his thing with a chick and he gets into a car accident at the end of it because he's distracted by how good the head is. Then on the third track, he wishes that he could do his thing in the back from a low profile with no one watching him, no one seeing him, nothing fucking up his rhythm or his groove. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying nothing about nothing. I'm just saying. But I did listen to it a lot, and those slurping noises, they gotta go. They can't stay. And while this album does abandon the beach kind of theme, the brightness and the sunniness, I guess if that's a word, of an album like Malibu, I still do think it keeps the West Coast vibe very strong because it is still a city within California. And if you know me, you know I love music that is very regionally influenced because it keeps the spirit of that region alive and well. But on Anderson .Paak being more confident on this record and not only having the fame and kind of the revenue to back up that more braggadocious kind of material that he raps so frequently about on this record than on Malibu. You can look at tracks like Mansa Musa, you can look at the QTip feature, you can look at the Tent track with Kendrick Lamar. All of these tracks details Anderson's newfound fame, and they detail Anderson's decision-making process in the lane that he's in right now. The intro track, The Chase, has this line in it that Anderson asks his audience what's the difference between the poor and the rich man. And I think that's a shout to his audience, and it's a question to himself. What's the difference between me now that I have some money in my pocket versus me when I didn't? I think it's more of a disclaimer to say that this album is going to have empty lyrics, or this album is going to have more lyrics that don't really center around any kind of concept or deep philosophical meaning. I think when you look at the lyrics of this song, The Chase, in my opinion, refers to Anderson .Paak coming at a crossroad, the moment at which Anderson decides whether or not to be greedy or split it with the people that he loves. So when I hear a track like Tint, where Anderson wants to be able to do his own thing but still stay low-key while having the perks of the celebrity and having all this new money, and then I look at a track like Who Are You, which describes Anderson .Paak's confusion with looking at the industry as it stands and all these people coming out of nowhere talking about what they did, and there not being any reference point for where any of these people are from. Talking about gang banging, talking about gun violence, talking about all this other shit, when Anderson .Paak, his whole MO was to come into the industry to get the money, get the bag. Of course, I'm sure he wanted to make music, but he makes an emphasis on this album to say that he wanted to get to the bag. All this other shit talking about, oh, you a gangbanger and you did this, like, this is why I fucking hate rap. There's another reference here where he says, I'm out in Philly, I thought it'd be colder, meaning I thought the people that claim to be so hard and so rough and tough as nails, I thought it'd be cold out here. I thought y'all be ruthless. Y'all talk big in your music, I don't see it though. And this is again where I reference the production, because I know a lot of people have an issue with the production of a track like this, but honestly, it's a little bit more of an abrasive, more confused tone sonically that I get, which is kind of the atmosphere that Anderson .Paak should be in when he's talking about being so shocked and confused by everything that's going on in the rap game right now. This part of the album kind of just feels like an angry, confused Anderson .Paak that wants to make an emphasis to get the bag, but everyone else seems so distracted by how they're perceived. Although a lot of people have their issues with the production on Mansa Musa, I think the sentiment of this track is even more so Anderson wanting to stay connected to his roots while still having the fruits of his labor be intact. He'd rather be hood rich than be out here in the celebrity and the industry with all the fake people. This track is saying I'd rather be rich in the hood than be rich in the hills. And while I agree with everybody with the fake Jamaican patois and the voices that you might not like that cover other people's accents, I really don't have anything to defend that, other than since I don't mind Anderson .Paak's voice, he kind of gets away with it. But you're right, you know, if you don't like that, I understand why. Or you get to a track like Cheers with QTip, where he talks about living life in the fast lane and not being able to give advice to someone like Mac Miller because he's living in a similar way. QTip also reflects on the loss of some of his loved ones and the loss of a Tribe Called Quest member Phife Dawg. Another reference to needing to disconnect in order to get the message, saying that he needed to separate himself from certain things in order to fully see the bigger picture. Another thing that Anderson .Paak is referencing in this album. I've switched between calling him Paak and Paak so many times in this video alone. It's just another track on wanting the emphasis to be on getting the bag, but not necessarily wanting your life to be encompassed in all the celebrity and the bullshit that comes with it. We're on a track like Saviers Road, you get a hook that says, I could sell you faith, but you niggas don't believe, basically saying that I can't give you something that you have no hope and faith in. You don't believe in beyond what you can see, you believe in what makes you feel sustained right now, which can be found from the perspective of a drug dealer, which is what he raps about for a majority of this track. Saying that if you have no faith to the bigger picture, if you have no belief or drive or idea in anything, you're likely to fall prey to anything and everything. While he uses drugs as a metaphor in this song, it can be applied to pretty much anything. I would give you something to believe in, but if you don't believe, then there's no point. So be subject to everything else out here. Talking about how there's nothing wrong with having money, but integrity goes a long way too, and having someone that you can trust and having people that have your back is an important thing, not necessarily flexing and talking too much. This gives Pusha T the opportunity to talk about his brother Malice and, you know, the integrity that he showed in turning down money when he could have gotten tons when it came to including himself back with Pusha T, who's obviously on a different path and still raps about what he raps about in his music. This not only helps to reinforce the idea that Malice has tons of integrity and maintains his faith, but it also references the track not long before at Saviers Road, where Anderson is talking about, I could sell you faith, but you niggas don't believe. He's saying in this track, Pusha T, Malice clearly has something that he believes in, so he's not likely to fall prey to everything else out here in the world. Malice is an example of that. Pusha T's verse unintentionally is a reference again to Saviors Road. God damn, is the production on this track hard hitting. When you reference a track like Trippy that features J. Cole, which most of the features on this album have pretty good moments, a track like this kind of goes back and references how Anderson .Paak feels like there's not really anybody out there. Now that I've put myself in this position and I'm at the point that I'm at in life, I still find myself going back to that thing that gave me solace in the beginning, which the thing that kept me rooted, the thing that, you know, brought me happiness, because I can't find it out here. A good portion of this album is Anderson .Paak trying to maintain his core in an atmosphere that doesn't necessarily require it. This track is your roots calling back to you in a way and saying that we need to reconnect and, you know, stay strong and stay knitted. It's more than just going back and finding an ex that you used to fuck with. It's reconnecting to your origins. It's reconnecting to something that gave you extreme happiness and solace, something that you apparently can't find in your current position. On a track like 6 Summers, Anderson again is going at Trump and going at his, I guess, perception of him by saying that Trump has shown himself in more ways than one to be a racially ignorant man, or a culturally ignorant one, in my opinion. So you think about this track from the perspective of what would be the biggest offense to a rich, wealthy Caucasian male that has shown himself in more ways than one to be on the conservative side, while also showing himself to be less, I guess, empathetic to a certain group of people, having an illegitimate child who also kisses senoritas and black girls, whose mother is also El Salve. It's not a big concept here. He also talks about gun violence and gives his opinion and his input on what he feels could kind of deter it from being such a huge issue. If people would kind of sit down, hit the blunt, and discuss their issues more than they would go and get a gun and shoot somebody. While I don't 100% agree with everything that Paak is saying in this track from a political standpoint, I think just the idea that he's poking fun at Trump for, you know, the tabloid being out there that he does have illegitimate children, and the idea that this track is called 6 Summers, which is a reference to the terms that Trump still has remaining in office. I think that's kind of funny. And also saying that at the very least things are likely not to change within the next 3 years because Trump is still going to be president by 2021. All in all, I don't get why people are fronting this album off for having the production that Dr. Dre shows as far as G-Funk and having a bit more of a confident record. In my opinion, I think it helps this album a lot more, Anderson .Paak being in the position that he's in, to be a lot more focused and have a lot more answers than he's got questions. It seems a lot less confused, and it feels a lot more centered around a much more confident ideology and a more confident man in general. So having production from a genre of music that's a lot more braggadocious than others, I don't really think is a bad fit for the subject matter of a lot of this project, especially when Anderson .Paak is trying to keep to his core while talking about the thing that he came into the industry with the biggest idea for, which was getting the bag. Having production like this doesn't seem like it doesn't make sense, in my opinion. But that's just me. I'm sticking with the score I gave it. I really enjoyed this project. Production to me was amazing. I love the Snoop Dogg feature and a couple of others, and yeah, I hope y'all enjoy it too. And that's pretty much it. It's just more of a tribute to Anderson .Paak trying to remain his own person in a landscape where no one remains their own person. I honestly think it's a much more exciting listen than Malibu, but that's just me. Thank y'all for watching. Again, let me know how you're feeling about the album in the comment section down below. Definitely want to hear the rest of your opinions, but other than that, I'm pretty much off it. I really love this record, so much so that I did again buy it twice. Also, Bubbling 100% should have been a part of this track listing. I do. And another point to remember is that the album actually ends at Cheers. The other 2 tracks are bonus cuts. So, I mean, if you really don't like them that much, they are just bonus tracks, and this kind of ends at track number 12. So, yeah, there's that.